Captain Hyan stood on the observation deck of Station Harmony, staring at the planet below. New Jeju looked peaceful from orbit. The colony world glowed with city lights, home to 9 million humans who had built lives there over 40 years. His sister lived down there with her husband and 2 children. He had promised to visit next month for his nephew's birthday. The communication panel beeped. Hyan walked over and accepted the call. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen, and the old man looked worried. "Captain, we have a situation. Vrin warships just appeared in the New Jeju system. 15 of them." Hyan's stomach dropped. The Vrin were an alien species that had contacted humanity 5 years ago. They were more advanced, more powerful, and they had made it clear they thought humans were inferior. For weeks, they had been demanding that humans abandon 12 colonies, including New Jeju. They claimed the territory was sacred to them, though humans had been living there for decades. How long until they reached the planet? Hyan asked. "They're already there. Captain, they're not responding to any hails. Ambassador Nari has been trying to reach their command ship for 20 minutes. Hyan activated the long-range scanners. His hands shook as he pulled up the view of New Jeju. The Vrin ships hung in low orbit like dark insects. They were positioned over every major city on the planet. "Get me a line to the surface. I need to talk to my sister." Before the Admiral could respond, every screen in the station lit up. Every monitor, every personal device, every communication panel suddenly showed the same image. A Vrin stood in what looked like a command center. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. Its face had no nose, just slits, and its eyes were completely black. "People of Earth," the Vrin spoke in perfect English, "we gave you a chance to leave our territory peacefully. You refused. Now you will learn what happens to those who defy the Vrin Empire." The image changed. Hyan saw a city on New Jeju. He recognized it instantly as Daejeon City, where his sister lived. The streets were filled with people looking up at the sky. Then the Vrin ships opened fire. The weapons didn't explode. They didn't destroy buildings. They were precise. Hyan watched in horror as beams of light touched person after person, and each human simply fell dead. The weapons moved through the streets like searchlights at a concert, and everywhere they touched, people died. Children died holding their parents' hands. Families died in their homes. Workers died at their jobs. The broadcast didn't stop. It went on and on. The Vrin showed every city, every town, every settlement on New Jeju. They showed the weapons moving across farmlands and research stations. They showed the 9 million people of New Jeju dying one by one. And they broadcast it to every human in every colony. On every station, on Earth itself, Hyan tried to turn it off. But the broadcast couldn't be stopped. The Vrin had overridden every system. He was forced to watch. Everyone was forced to watch. He saw his sister. She was running down a street, carrying his 5-year-old nephew. His brother-in-law ran beside her, holding their daughter. The light found them. His sister fell first, and his nephew tumbled from her arms. His brother-in-law tried to shield their daughter, but it made no difference. They all fell together in the middle of the street. Hyan fell to his knees. Around him, other crew members were screaming or crying or standing frozen in shock. The broadcast continued for 4 hours. 4 hours of watching every person on New Jeju die. The Vrin showed it all, missing nothing, skipping no one. When it finally ended, the Vrin commander appeared again. "This is mercy," the alien said. "This was one colony. You have 23. If you do not leave our territory within 30 days, we will do this to every colony world you have established. We will broadcast each one. We will make sure every human watches as we remove you from space that belongs to us. This is your only warning. The screens went dark. Hyan sat on the floor of the observation deck, unable to move. His mind couldn't accept what he had just seen. 9 million people. His sister, his nephew and niece, all of them dead, and the Vryn had broadcast it like it was entertainment. Other species across the galaxy had surely seen it too. The Vryn had sent the broadcast everywhere. But no one spoke up. No one condemned it. The galaxy remained silent. Humanity was alone. 3 hours later, Hyan found himself in a conference room on Station Harmony. Admiral Park had called an emergency meeting with every ship captain and station commander in range. There were 30 people in the room, and every one of them had the same look in their eyes. Shock, grief, and something else. Something cold and hard. Ambassador Nari attended the meeting by video link. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. The Galactic Council has issued a statement. They say this is a matter between the Vryn and humanity. They will not intervene. Of course they won't, Admiral Park said. His voice was quiet, but everyone in the room leaned forward to listen. The Vryn are powerful. No one wants to anger them. But they made a mistake today. What mistake? Someone asked. They think this will make us afraid. They think we'll run away and abandon our colonies. They don't understand humans. Park stood up and looked at each person in the room. They showed us exactly who they are. They showed us they have no mercy, no honor, no regard for life. They broadcast the murder of 9 million civilians and called it a warning. The Admiral walked to the window and looked out at the stars. I've been in the military for 43 years. I've always believed in measured responses, in diplomacy, in following the rules of war. But there are no rules anymore. The Vryn made sure of that today. He turned back to face them. I'm calling for full authorization of the Prometheus Protocol. Every weapon we've developed and locked away because they were too terrible to use. Every technology we deemed too dangerous. We're going to use all of it. Admiral, Nari said carefully, what exactly are you proposing? Park's expression was stone. They wanted to show us mercy. They wanted to teach us fear. Instead, they're going to learn what humans do when you murder our children and broadcast it for the galaxy to see. He pressed a button on the table, and a star map appeared. It showed Vryn space, 47 star systems spread across a vast region of space. We're going to remove them. All of them. The Vryn Empire will cease to exist. The room was silent. Then Captain Hyan stood up. His voice was hollow, empty of everything except purpose. When do we start? Immediately, Park said. Get your crews ready. We're going to war. And when we're done, the galaxy will remember what happens when you push humanity too far. 3 weeks after New Jeju, Dr. Choi entered a facility that officially didn't exist. It was buried 3 kilometers under the surface of Luna, hidden from satellites and sensors. Armed guards checked his identification 4 times before allowing him through the final door. Inside, Admiral Park was waiting with a dozen other people. Thank you all for coming, Park said. What we discuss here today will never be recorded. No one outside this room will know these details. But what we decide here will shape the future of humanity. Dr. Choi took his seat. He recognized some of the others. Dr. Kong, the xenobiologist who had lost her entire family on New Jeju. Commander Shin, who led the Ghost Division, humanity's secret black operations fleet. Engineer Kwan, who had been designing experimental weapons for the past 10 years. For the past 40 years, Park continued, we've been developing weapons that we never planned to use. Weapons that violated every treaty, every moral code, every rule of civilized warfare. We kept them locked away because we believed we were better than that. The Admiral pressed a button, and images appeared on the screen. Ships that looked wrong somehow, like they bent space around them. missiles that glowed with an unnatural light, containers filled with substances that made Choi's skin crawl just looking at them. The Prometheus Protocol. We named it after the Titan who gave fire to humanity. These weapons are our fire, and today I'm proposing we use them. Engineer Quan stood up. He was young, barely 30, but his eyes looked much older. The Cascade Drive is ready. It's a weapon that can force a star to go supernova. We can make it happen in a controlled way, targeting specific systems. The star explodes, and everything in that system dies. Planets, moons, space stations, everything. Someone gasped. Dr. Kong spoke up, her voice shaking. How many of these do we have? 50, Quan said. We can build more. Each one takes 2 weeks to manufacture. What else? Park asked. Commander Shin activated another image. It showed a sleek ship that seemed to absorb light. Ghost Division has been mapping Vryn territory for 3 years. They don't know we've been there. We've been testing new stealth technology that makes our ships completely invisible to their sensors. We can go anywhere in their empire, and they'll never see us coming. Why were we mapping their territory 3 years ago? Someone asked. We were supposed to be at peace. Shin smiled coldly. We've never trusted them. The diplomatic exchanges, the cultural visits, all of that was just a cover. We've been preparing for war since the day we met them. We just didn't know we'd need these preparations so soon. Dr. Choi cleared his throat. I've been studying Vryn biology from the samples we obtained during the diplomatic missions. They have a unique genetic marker that exists in no other species we've encountered. I've developed a bioweapon that targets only that marker. It's a virus that's harmless to every other form of life, but to the Vryn, it's 100% fatal. The room fell silent. Dr. Kong stared at him. You created a species-specific plague? I did. It can be deployed through atmosphere, water, or direct contact. Once it's released in a Vryn population, it will spread until every Vryn in that area is dead. It would take approximately 72 hours. That's genocide, someone whispered. Yes, Dr. Choi said simply. That's exactly what it is. Admiral Park looked around the room. I want everyone here to understand what we're discussing. We're not talking about winning a war. We're talking about extermination. The complete removal of the Vryn species from the galaxy. I need to know if everyone in this room can live with that. Dr. Kong stood up. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was clear. They killed my mother, my father, my 2 brothers, and my sister. They killed my niece who was 3 years old. They broadcast it and made me watch. Made all of us watch. She looked around the room with tears streaming down her face. I'll do whatever it takes. Give me the tools, and I'll help wipe them from existence. One by one, everyone in the room agreed. When it came to Dr. Choi's turn, he simply nodded. He had created the bioweapon 2 years ago, just as an experiment. Now he would get to see if it worked. The meeting continued for hours. They planned every detail. Commander Shin's Ghost Division would go first, eliminating the Vryn's long-range sensors and communication arrays. The Vryn would be blinded, unable to see the Earth fleet approaching. Then the main fleet would move in, system by system, destroying everything. What about civilians? Someone asked. The Vryn have children too, families. Park's expression didn't change. They showed us what they think about civilians when they killed 9 million of ours. Every Vryn who watched that broadcast and did nothing is complicit. Every Vryn who celebrated it is guilty. We will give them more mercy than they gave us. We will give them a warning. 6 hours to evacuate. And if they don't evacuate, then they die. 2 weeks later, Captain Hyan stood on the bridge of his new ship. The EDS Retribution, was the largest warship humanity had ever built. It had been constructed in secret over the past 5 years, part of the preparations that Commander Shin had mentioned. The ship was armed with weapons that could crack planets and missiles that could bend space itself. Hyon's crew was ready. Every person on board had lost someone on New Jeju. They had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not come back, knowing they might become monsters in the process. Dr. Kang worked in the ship's laboratory, preparing her bioweapons. Engineer Kwan was in engineering, making final adjustments to the Cascade drive. Commander Shin was already out there somewhere in Vrin space, invisible and deadly, preparing the way. Admiral Park's face appeared on the main screen. All ships, this is Admiral Park. In 1 hour, we will begin Operation Prometheus. 847 ships will jump to Vrin space. We will eliminate the Vrin Empire, one system at a time. We will be thorough, and we will be merciless. He paused, and for a moment, something like doubt crossed his face. Then it was gone. The Vrin made a choice when they killed our people and broadcast it for entertainment. They chose to show us who they really were. Now we will show them who we are. We are humans, and we protect our own, no matter the cost. The transmission ended. Hyan looked at his crew. They were all young, all angry, all grieving. Power up all systems. Prepare for jump. The lights dimmed as the ship's engines came to life. Hyan thought about his sister one last time. He remembered her laugh, the way she used to tease him when they were children. He remembered his nephew's smile. Then he pushed those memories away and locked them somewhere deep inside. He would need them later when this was over. For now, he needed to be cold, calculating, lethal. All ships reporting ready, sir, his first officer said. Hyan sat in his command chair and looked at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, the Vrin were celebrating their victory, thinking they had taught humanity a lesson. They had no idea what was coming. Jump, Hyan ordered. The ship lurched, and reality twisted around them. When it stabilized, they were in Vrin space. 847 human warships appeared simultaneously across the Vrin Empire's borders. The war had begun, and humanity would not stop until the job was finished. Commander Shin's ship drifted through Vrin space like a ghost. The stealth systems worked perfectly. Her small vessel passed within 100 kilometers of a Vrin patrol ship, and they never detected her. She had been in enemy territory for 6 days now, and her team had destroyed 43 sensor stations without being noticed once. Target acquired, her pilot whispered. Ahead of them, a massive sensor array floated in space. It was one of the Vrin's main early warning systems, capable of detecting ships jumping into this region from light years away. Deploy the charges, Shin ordered. 2 members of her crew left the ship in zero-gravity suits. They moved slowly, carefully, planting explosive devices on the array's power core. The Vrin crew inside the station had no idea humans were outside their window. When Shin's people finished and returned to the ship, she waited exactly 10 minutes. Detonate. The explosion was silent in space. The sensor array broke apart, its pieces spinning off into the darkness. Shin checked her display. All across Vrin space, other Ghost Division ships were doing the same thing. In 3 hours, the Vrin would be blind. Back on the EDS Retribution, Captain Hyan received the signal from Shin. All sensor arrays down, Captain. They can't see us coming. Excellent. Take us to the first target. The first target was a Vrin colony called Torith. It held 3 billion Vrin and was one of their outer territories. Hyun's ship jumped to the system and appeared in high orbit. The colony didn't even know they were there for 20 minutes because their sensors were gone. When the Vrin finally detected the human fleet, they sent a transmission. Unidentified ships, this is Torith Colony Defense. You are in violation of Rin space. Depart immediately, or we will open fire. Hyan opened a channel. His voice was calm and cold. This is Captain Hyan of the Earth Defense Ship Retribution. You have 6 hours to evacuate this colony. Anyone remaining after that time will be eliminated. This is your only warning. There was a long silence. Then the Vrin commander spoke again. This is a joke. You cannot threaten us. We are the Vrin Empire. You are primitives who don't know their place. You have 5 hours and 59 minutes, Hyan said, and closed the channel. On the planet below, chaos erupted. Some Vrin believed the warning and tried to leave. They rushed to spaceports and demanded seats on any ship leaving the planet. But most Vrin laughed at the threat. They remembered the broadcast from New Jeju. They remembered how easily their warships had killed humans. They didn't believe these humans could do anything to them. The Vrin military sent 12 warships to confront the human fleet. Hyan watched them approach on his display. Weapons range in 3 minutes, sir, his tactical officer reported. Fire when ready. The human weapons were faster, more precise, and more powerful than anything the Vrin had seen before. The 12 Vrin warships were destroyed in 40 seconds. Not damaged, not disabled, completely destroyed. There wasn't enough left to identify what they had been. On the planet, some Vrin started to believe the warning. The evacuation became more frantic. But 6 hours wasn't enough time to evacuate 3 billion people. The spaceports could only handle so many ships. Most of the population couldn't leave, even if they wanted to. Engineer Quan worked in the Retribution's weapons bay, preparing the Cascade Drive. It's ready, Captain. Once activated, the star will begin collapsing. The supernova will occur in approximately 8 hours. Everything in the system will be destroyed. Hyan checked the time. 6 hours had passed. How many evacuated? Approximately 40 million, sir. There are still 2.96 billion on the planet. Hyan closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about giving them more time. Then he remembered his sister falling in the street with his nephew in her arms. The Vrin hadn't given them any time at all. Activate the Cascade Drive. The weapon launched from the ship. It was small, barely bigger than a person, but it carried enough power to kill a star. It flew toward the sun at the center of the system and disappeared into the burning surface. Deep in the star's core, the weapon began its work. Done, sir. We should leave now. The human fleet jumped away. Behind them, the star began to die. 8 hours later, it exploded. The supernova consumed everything. The planet Torith, the moons, the space stations, the 2.96 billion Vrin who hadn't evacuated. All of it burned away in an instant. The news reached the Vrin High Council within hours. They couldn't believe it at first. The humans had destroyed an entire star system. It was impossible. But the reports kept coming. The system was gone. 3 billion Vrin were dead. The High Council sent an emergency transmission to Earth. We demand you cease hostilities immediately. We are willing to negotiate. Admiral Park's response was broadcast across Vrin space so everyone could hear it. No, you gave our people no warning. You gave them no mercy. You broadcast their deaths for entertainment. We gave your colony 6 hours. There. 6 hours more than you gave us. There will be no negotiation. There will be no surrender. The Vrin Empire ends today. Specialist Lim sat in her station on the EDS Indomitable, Admiral Park's flagship. She was humanity's best at communications warfare, and she had hacked into the Vrin networks weeks ago. She could see everything they said to each other. She could read their private messages, their military orders, their personal communications. Admiral, you need to see this, she said. Park came to her station. Lim showed him the messages she had intercepted from the day of the New Jeju massacre. The Vrin High Council had ordered the attack as a demonstration of superiority. They had broadcast it because they wanted to show the galaxy what happened to species that defied them. They had chosen New Jeju specifically because it had the largest human population, making it the best example. But worse than that were the civilian messages. Lim showed Park how regular Vrin citizens had reacted to the broadcast. They had celebrated. They had hosted parties to watch the humans die. They had made jokes about it. Some had recorded their favorite moments and shared them as entertainment. Park stared at the messages in silence. Then he called a meeting with all his captains. "I want everyone to see this," he said, sharing the intercepted messages. "Some of you have been struggling with what we're doing. Some of you think we're going too far. I want you to understand who we're fighting." He showed them the celebrations, the parties, the jokes. This is what they think of us. This is how they value human life. Every Vrin who watched that broadcast and did nothing is guilty. Every Vrin who celebrated it deserves what's coming. Dr. Kang sat in her laboratory, preparing the bioweapon. She had cried every day for the first week. Now she didn't cry anymore. She just worked. The virus was ready. It was elegant in its simplicity. It would spread through the Vrin population like wildfire, and it would kill every single one of them. She thought about her 3-year-old niece. Her beautiful, laughing, innocent niece who had been murdered for no reason except to scare other humans. Dr. Kong had watched her die on that broadcast. She had seen the light touch her niece's small body and watched her fall. They made their choice, she whispered to herself as she loaded the bioweapon into deployment canisters. Now they live with the consequences. The human fleet moved to the next system, then the next, then the next. Always the same pattern. Jump in, send the warning. 6 hours, then death. Sometimes the Vrin evacuated. Sometimes they tried to fight. Sometimes they just waited, not believing until it was too late. Captain Hyan kept count. Torith system, 3 billion dead. Vex system, 1.8 billion dead. Hornum system, 4.2 billion dead. The numbers grew larger with each system. His crew had stopped reacting to the casualty reports. They just did their jobs and moved to the next target. "Sir, we're receiving a message from a Vrin civilian ship," his communications officer said. "They're begging us to stop. They say they're just civilians. They had nothing to do with New Jeju." Hyan didn't even look up from his display. "Ignore it. Next target." They had been at this for 2 months now. 12 systems destroyed. 15 billion Vrin dead. And the human fleet was just getting started. They had 35 more systems to visit, and they weren't going to stop until the Vrin Empire was nothing but a memory. 4 months into the war, Captain Bay stood on the bridge of the EDS Sanctuary. Her ship was different from the others in the fleet. It carried no weapons, no soldiers, no instruments of death. Instead, it was filled with medical bays, food supplies, and temporary housing. Her mission was to save those who could be saved. "Captain, we're receiving evacuation requests from the Murkov colony," her communications officer reported. "They're accepting the terms. They want to surrender peacefully." "Take us there," Bay ordered. The sanctuary jumped to Murkov and found thousands of Vrin ships waiting. They were civilian vessels, packed with refugees who had chosen to flee rather than die. Bay's crew worked quickly, scanning each ship to make sure they carried no weapons, then directing them to safe zones far from the combat areas. "How many this time?" Bay asked. 7 million, Captain. That brings our total to 83 million Vrin saved. Bay nodded, but she didn't feel like celebrating. Yes, they had saved 83 million. But they had killed nearly 100 billion. The math was terrible. For every Vryn they saved, they killed 1,000. Back on the Retribution, Captain Hyan was preparing for the biggest battle yet. The Vryn High Council had gathered every remaining warship in their empire and fortified their homeworld. Vryn Prime. It was home to 45 billion Vryn, their capital, their cultural center. Everything that mattered to their species. Intelligence reports 10,000 Vryn warships in defensive positions around the planet, his tactical officer said. They've also deployed planetary shields and orbital defense platforms. Sir, this is going to be bad. Hyan studied the display. The human fleet had lost very few ships so far, because they had superior technology and the element of surprise. But this was different. The Vryn were making their last stand, and they were putting everything into this defense. How many ships do we have? 812, sir. We've taken some losses, but nothing significant yet. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen. All ships, this is your admiral. The Vryn have chosen to make their stand at their homeworld. They're sending us a message. They want to negotiate a ceasefire. Hyan waited, knowing what was coming. I told them no. We gave them the same offer we've given every system. 6 hours to evacuate. They've refused. They say they'll fight to the last ship, the last soldier, the last child, if necessary. Park's expression was stone. So be it. All ships engage. The battle began with the human fleet jumping in at maximum weapons range. The Vryn opened fire immediately, and space lit up with energy beams and missiles. Hyan's ship rocked as a blast hit their shields. Shields at 70%, his engineer reported. They're stronger than we thought. Target their command ship. Fire everything. The Retribution unleashed its full arsenal. The Vryn command ship's shields held for almost 10 seconds before collapsing. The ship broke apart, and its destruction seemed to confuse the Vryn formation. The human fleet pressed the advantage. The battle raged for 8 days. It was brutal, desperate, and terrible. The Vryn deployed weapons they had kept hidden, forbidden technologies. They could crack planets and bend time. One human ship was caught in a temporal loop, experiencing its own destruction over and over. Another was hit by a planet cracker and simply ceased to exist. Captain Hyan's ship took severe damage on the 3rd day. A Vryn weapon tore through their hull, killing 70 crew members instantly. All hands abandon ship. Hyan ordered, "Get to the escape pods now." He was the last to leave, making sure everyone else got out first. As his escape pod launched, he watched the Retribution get hit again. The ship exploded, and he felt something inside him break. He had commanded that ship for only 4 months, but it had been his home. Dr. Kong worked frantically in her laboratory on the Indomitable as the battle raged around her. "I need more time," she shouted over the sound of explosions. "The bioweapon isn't ready for deployment yet." "Make it ready," Admiral Park ordered over the com. "We're losing ships faster than expected. We need every advantage." Kong looked at the virus samples. She had been refining it, making it more potent, more contagious. But she hadn't finished the safety protocols. If this virus got loose in a mixed population, it could mutate. It could become something worse. "Admiral, if I deploy this now, I can't guarantee it will only target Vryn. The safety checks aren't complete." "Dr. Kong, we have 127 ships left. We started with 812. Deploy the weapon now, or we're all going to die here." Kong closed her eyes. Then she loaded the virus into missile warheads, launching in 10 seconds. The missiles penetrated the planetary shield through gaps created by the ongoing battle. They detonated in the atmosphere over Vryn Prime's major cities, releasing the bioweapon. The virus spread quickly, exactly as designed. Within hours, Vryn across the planet began dying. Within days, billions were dead, Commander Shin was on the planet's surface, leading a ground team to disable the shield generators. She and her soldiers moved through a city that was dying around them. Vryn lay in the streets, victims of the virus. Some were still alive, coughing, bleeding. Reaching out for help. Shin saw a Vryn child, maybe 5 years old in human terms, sitting next to its dead parents. The child looked up at her with those black eyes, not understanding what was happening. Shin remembered her own niece, remembered what it felt like to lose family. She picked up the child and carried it to her transport. Medical, I'm bringing in a civilian. Get the antivirus ready. Commander, there is no antivirus. Dr. Kong didn't have time to make one. Shin looked down at the child in her arms. Then make one. That's an order. On the 8th day, the Vryn fleet broke. They had lost too many ships, too many people. The virus was killing their homeworld, and nothing they did could stop it. The remaining warships attempted to retreat, but the human fleet pursued them. Only a handful escaped. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the casualty reports come in. Human losses, 685 ships destroyed, 70,000 personnel dead. It was the costliest battle in human history. But the Vryn losses were worse. 10,000 warships destroyed. Vryn Prime was dying, its population dropping by millions every hour as the virus spread. The planetary shields had failed. The orbital defenses were gone. The Vryn Empire's heart had stopped beating. Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from the remaining Vryn colonies, Specialist Lim reported. They're begging us to stop. They're offering complete surrender, reparations, anything we want. Park looked at the display showing Vryn Prime. The beautiful planet that had been their capital was now covered in plague and death. Part of him wanted to accept the surrender. Part of him wanted to stop this madness. Then he thought about the broadcast. He thought about 9 million humans dying while the Vryn watched and celebrated. He thought about how they had made humanity watch, forced them to see every death, every murder. Tell them we'll consider their surrender after we've visited every remaining Vryn system. They can wait and see if we're in a merciful mood when we're done. Dr. Kong stood in her laboratory, looking at the empty virus containers. She had done it. She had created a plague that would wipe out billions. Her hands were shaking. She couldn't stop seeing that broadcast from New Jeju, but she also couldn't stop seeing the Vryn dying in the streets of their cities. What have I become? She whispered to the empty room. No one answered. Outside, the war continued. The human fleet moved on to the next target, and the next, and the next. The Vryn population, which had been 267 billion at the start of the war, had dropped to 8 billion. Most of those were refugees scattered across space, running from a humanity that wouldn't stop coming. Captain Hyon, now commanding a new ship, sat in his quarters and tried to remember his sister's face. He couldn't. He could remember that she died, could remember watching it happen, but her actual face was becoming blurry in his memory. That scared him more than the battles, more than the death counts, more than anything. He was forgetting what she looked like. He was forgetting why he started this. All he knew now was the mission. Eliminate the Vryn. Everything else had faded away. 1 year after the New Jeju massacre, Ambassador Nari stood before the Galactic Council. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from 80 different species. All of them were staring at her, with expressions ranging from fear to disgust to horror. The human fleet had stopped firing 3 weeks ago. The war was over. The Vryn Empire no longer existed. Ambassador Nari, the council leader, spoke. His species were called the Ket, tall beings with blue skin and 3 eyes. We have called you here to answer for humanity's actions. The reports we have received are difficult to believe. Can you confirm these numbers? Nari looked at the datapad in her hands. She had read these numbers so many times they were burned into her memory. Yes, Council Leader, I can confirm them. 43 Vryn star systems were destroyed. The Vryn population has been reduced from 267 billion to approximately 2.1 billion survivors. These survivors are scattered across refugee camps in neutral space. The chamber erupted with voices. Some species were shouting in anger. Others seemed to be crying. The council leader called for silence. 265 billion deaths, he said slowly. Ambassador, your species has committed the largest genocide in recorded galactic history. How do you respond to this? Nari stood straight, meeting the eyes of every representative in the chamber. I respond by asking a question. Where were you 1 year ago? The council leader frowned. What do you mean? 1 year ago, the Vryn broadcast the execution of 9 million human civilians. They did it slowly, over 4 hours, and they sent it to every screen in human space. They forced us to watch. They made sure we saw every death, every murdered child, every family killed together. Nari's voice grew louder. They broadcast it to you as well. Everyone in this chamber received that transmission. Where were you then? No one answered. The Vryn didn't just kill 9 million of my people. They did it as entertainment. They celebrated. Their civilians hosted parties to watch humans die. And when we called on this council for help, for intervention, for justice, what did you say? She pulled up a recording and played it for the chamber. You said it was a matter between the Vryn and humanity. You said you would not intervene. The council leader's face changed color, a sign of shame in his species. Ambassador, we understand your anger, but that does not justify what humanity has done. The scale of your response is unprecedented. You have eliminated an entire civilization. They chose to eliminate themselves, Nari said coldly. We gave every colony the same warning. 6 hours to evacuate. The Vryn gave our people no warning at all. We gave them 6 hours more than they deserved. She pulled up more data and displayed it for everyone to see. Before we started this war, our intelligence teams intercepted Vryn communications. Would you like to know what we found? She showed them the messages, the celebrations, the jokes, the Vryn High Council's orders that labeled the new Jeju massacre as a demonstration of superiority. She showed them the Vryn military plans that outlined the complete elimination of humanity if we didn't obey their demands. They weren't going to stop with New Jeju. They were going to kill all of us. 15 billion humans were scheduled for elimination. They had it all planned out, system by system, broadcast by broadcast. We didn't start this war. We just refused to die quietly. The chamber fell silent. Nari could see some representatives looking uncomfortable. They had seen the original broadcast, but most had looked away. They hadn't wanted to get involved. Now they were seeing the full context, and it was harder to judge humanity quite so easily. But not everyone was convinced. The representative from the Marl species stood up. Even if everything you say is true, you went too far. 265 billion deaths, Ambassador. How many of those were civilians? How many were children? Nari felt something crack inside her. How many of our 9 million were children? She asked quietly. How many of them were babies? Toddlers? Teenagers with their whole lives ahead of them. The Vryn didn't care. They killed them all and made us watch. Captain Hyan sat on New Jeju, or what was left of it. The planet had been abandoned after the massacre, left as a memorial. He visited his sister's street every day. Someone had placed markers where each person had fallen. His sister's marker, his nephew's marker, his niece's marker, his brother-in-law's marker. They were right there on the street where they had died running. He spent hours there, just sitting. Other survivors came sometimes. They would sit together in silence, remembering the dead. No one spoke much. What was there to say? Dr. Kong worked at a refugee camp on the border of former Vryn space. 2 million Vryn survivors lived there, mostly civilians who had evacuated when the warnings came. She was helping treat them for various ailments, using her knowledge of their biology to save lives instead of taking them. "Why are you helping us?" a young Vryn asked her. His name was Kel, and he had lost his entire family in the war. "Your species killed mine. Why would you save me?" Kang looked at him for a long moment. "Because killing was easy. Saving is harder. I need to remember how to do the hard thing." She thought about her niece every day. She thought about the virus she had created and the billions it had killed. She would never forgive herself, but she could at least try to make up for some of it. One life saved at a time. Commander Shin continued serving in the military. Someone had to remember what was done and why it was done. She had helped save the Vryn child from Vryn crime. The child was living with a human family now, one of the few Vryn adopted by humans after the war. Shin visited sometimes, making sure the child was okay. "Do you regret it?" one of her young officers asked her once. "The war. Everything we did." Shin thought about it carefully. "Regret isn't the right word. I regret that it was necessary. But given the same situation, I'd do it again." They gave us no choice. Admiral Park stood trial at the International War Tribunal on Earth. Humanity had decided to judge its own actions rather than let the galaxy do it. The trial was broadcast across all human worlds. Park sat in the defendant's chair, his hands folded calmly in his lap. "Admiral Park," the judge said, "you are charged with ordering the deaths of 265 billion sentient beings. How do you plead?" "Guilty," Park said simply. "I gave every order. Every system destroyed, every weapon deployed, every death that resulted from our actions was done under my command. I accept full responsibility." The courtroom murmured. Park's lawyer tried to speak, but Park waved him off. "I knew what I was doing. I knew the cost. I ordered it anyway, because the alternative was letting them kill us all. I stand by my decisions. If you need someone to punish, punish me. Leave my officers and soldiers alone." They were following orders. The trial continued for months. Witnesses testified. Evidence was presented. Dr. Kang testified about the bioweapon. Captain Hyan testified about the Cascade weapons. Commander Shin testified about the Ghost Division's operations. All of them said the same thing. Admiral Park had made the decisions, but they had all agreed. They were all guilty. In the end, Park was sentenced to life in prison. He accepted the sentence without complaint. "Someone needs to remember what we did," he told the judge. "Someone needs to carry that weight. Let it be me." Ambassador Nari's address to the Galactic Council became famous. She ended her speech with words that would be quoted for generations. "You call us monsters for what we did. Maybe you're right. Maybe we became monsters when we eliminated the Vryn. But we call ourselves survivors. We call ourselves a species that refused to die quietly. We gave the Vryn more mercy than they gave us. We gave them warnings. We gave them chances to surrender. We gave some of them the opportunity to live." She paused. "Would you have done less to save your species?" No one answered. "Humanity will accept the sanctions you place on us. We will accept the judgment of history. But we will not apologize for surviving. We will not apologize for protecting our own. If that makes us monsters in your eyes, so be it. We would rather be living monsters than dead saints." The galaxy imposed heavy sanctions on humanity. Trade was restricted. Diplomatic relations were severed with most species. Humans were banned from settling new worlds for 50 years. It was harsh, but it could have been worse. Some species had called for humanity's elimination, afraid of what humans might do if threatened again. But others remembered the broadcast from New Jeju. They remembered how the galaxy had stayed silent. They wondered what they would do if someone murdered 9 million of their people and broadcast it for entertainment. Some of them quietly reached out to humanity with messages of support. Not many, but some. On New Jeju, a memorial was completed. It was a massive wall with the names of all 9,247,891 victims carved into it. At the bottom, a single line was etched in every human language and all major galactic languages. They wanted to teach us fear. We taught them extinction. Captain Hyan attended the dedication ceremony. Thousands of survivors came. They stood in silence as each name was read aloud. It took 3 days to read them all. When his sister's name was read, Hyan finally cried. It was the first time he had cried since the broadcast. Dr. Kong stood next to him, and when her niece's name was read, she cried too. They held hands. These two people who had helped destroy a civilization, and they mourned what they had lost and what they had become. Years passed. The Vryn survivors slowly integrated into other societies. Some joined human colonies, living alongside the species that had destroyed their empire. It was strange and awkward, and sometimes painful, but slowly it worked. Children who had been too young to remember the war grew up together, human and Vryn, learning each other's languages and cultures. The galaxy slowly forgave humanity, or at least learned to live with them. Trade resumed. Diplomatic relations were restored. But no one forgot. No species would ever threaten humanity again, because everyone knew what humans were capable of when pushed too far. Commander Shin retired and wrote a book about the war. She called it The Price of Peace. In it, she described everything they had done and everything they had lost. The last line of the book became as famous as Ambassador Nari's speech. We're not them. We remember what it means to be merciful, even when we become monsters. That's what makes us human. Admiral Park died in prison 15 years after the war ended. His last words were reported to be, "I'd do it again. To save humanity, I'd do it all again." And deep in space, on a quiet colony world far from Earth, a young Vryn child played with human children in a schoolyard. The child's name was Kel, the same one Dr. Kong had treated in the refugee camp. He was laughing, chasing a ball, living a life his species never thought they'd have after the war. One of the human children asked him, "Do you hate us for what we did to your people?" Kel thought about it. He had asked himself that question many times. "No," he said finally. "I'm sad about what happened, but I understand why it happened. Your people were protecting themselves. Mine made a terrible mistake." The children went back to playing, and life continued. The past couldn't be changed, but the future could be better. That was what everyone hoped. That was what they all worked toward. And maybe, eventually, the galaxy would remember humanity for more than just the species that eliminated the Vryn. Maybe they'd remember the humans who gave mercy when they didn't have to, who saved millions when they could have killed them all, who chose to be better than their worst moment. But one thing was certain: no one would ever underestimate humanity again.